Greetings everyone, and welcome to another Mark of History, where today, once again, we have another sword by Romance of Men. And today they have sent me the Yami no Senshi Katana. And to be honest, I am probably going to completely butcher a lot of these names, because while I have a pronunciation guide for some of them, let's just say I am not Japanese, and nor do I speak fluent Japanese. And let's just say I'm not going to probably do a very good job of even attempting to pronounce these. But, nevertheless, here we go. The Yami no Senshi is a handmade katana. It is supposedly extra sharp. It is a spring steel as well. And it is a Unokubi-Zukuri style. Unokubi-Zukuri. Yep, that sounds about right. Or a Cormorant's neck. It is a unique sword craftsmanship style that includes a taper on the higher part of the blade, the first half of the blade. This is primarily where your cutting edge is, and this is designed to lighten up the tip of the blade. Instead of going the typical taper on the upper half of the blade, where it's normally flat on the top and maybe with a slight ridge in that, it's actually more tapered off, almost like a double-edged sword. But instead of it obviously not being sharp, it's meant to remove material and make the top of the cutting blade not only a lot faster, but cut a lot better. On top of this, the bottom half of the blade is strengthened up. Though it has a normal ridge style, it actually has a deep blood groove, or even just as one might call a fuller, on the bottom half of the blade to make the blade not only stronger, but again, still lighter. It is a very unique swordsmanship style that normally costs quite a bit, but this is a bit more, well, on the cheaper side of that option. It's $191 normally. I think it's currently on sale for $153, but we'll see how long that sale lasts. So if you're interested, I'm sure it'll still be there when I produce this video, so I want to check it out. Anyways, some basic stats on the blade. It is 41 inches long, or for you metric type people, it is 103 centimeters. The blade length on this is a pretty standard 28 inches, not too much special there, or 72 centimeters. It is a spring steel for the material, which I want to believe it's about a 1095. That's pretty standard spring steel or steel material on that for this type of thing. Usually don't go too much cheaper. 145 is another thing I've seen popping up quite a bit for spring steel options, but I don't know. I feel the carbon content's a little low for that. I want to say 1095 would be my bet, but honestly, they don't say. I'd have to look that up, to be honest. Anyways, it is a Unokubi-Zukuri style. Again, I probably just butchered that word. And is supposedly sharpened extra sharp to increase its cutting capacity. The blade thickness is 0.273 inches, which is a pretty thin blade. I mean, this thing is kind of coming out to be a bit of a lightweight, or 0.07 centimeters. The hardness of 53 HRC, which is pretty common for pretty much any other hardness. If you get a hardness that's below 50, it's time to be a bit concerned with your sword. The blade grind is a convex, as most of them are, and the katana weight is 42 ounces, or 1.2 kilograms. Well, that's actually pretty dang light. Most of these come in and clock in a little over about 50. I mean, it's not super light, but usually you're cutting off quite a few ounces there, actually, with that convex style. With the sheath, it is only 53 ounces. This is a lightweight. I mean, I've tested some of these things out, and one of my fancier swords is almost 50 ounces at least, and that thing is pretty decent. It'll make me a little concerned with testing, because, it's a lightweight. I'm worried last blade I had took a slight bend upon hitting the tatami mats. I'm kind of concerned. Well, with what I have in mind for it, this might do the same. But nevertheless, let's take a look at it, shall we? So let's review this weapon from pommel to tip, shall we? So to start off with the pommel, or the kashiri, honestly, is nothing really to write home about. It is basically a black one, just a solid round shape on the top of it. No ornamentation, no real design to it to really speak of. It doesn't look bad, it just kind of looks basic overall. The wrap overall is pretty nice. It's got obviously a traditional, usually black rayskin wrap, which looks pretty decent in that. And the wrap itself is pretty firm in that. I was worried about it slipping, especially with the more speedy cuts I'd be doing. And it doesn't seem to be sliding around a whole lot. It is a red and black wrap, which looks pretty nice. The only gripe I'd have to say, and this is again something I always say, but it's more just my own personal opinion, I always try my best to hide the little pegs, especially when you got a real black looking sword like this. It just helps blend it and complete the whole blade. But again, it's more just my own gripes and complaints. It doesn't really affect blade performance overall, and like I've mentioned before, it probably does better to actually remove the blade for cleaning. The charms in there looks like a black dragon charm. It blends in a little too much with the background, but I guess it goes along with the styling, what they're trying to do. Moving on to the Suba. This again is pretty basic. It's not really any fancy ornamentation. The guard as well is pretty basic overall. Like I said, there's not really much of a design pattern to it. It's black, basically a black spoke design, which looks pretty clean and pretty nice, and honestly doesn't look all that fancy, but it does do the job well and looks decent overall. Next we come to the Hagaki, and this again has the classic one. I'm pretty sure this was on the Dragon Katana that I received as well, but this probably fits in with the Seiya, which I'll mention earlier, as an Oni or demon symbol on it, which looks pretty cool and I really do appreciate the design of. Next, we come to the important bit of the weapon, the bit everybody's waiting for, a sword. Now the sword overall, it is pretty dang nice. There's no way to get around it. The blade, especially with the convex on the top, with the larger, fuller blood groove, with the blood groove running over that, it is a pretty complex looking design, and it definitely looks like it holds up well. And the feel of it's pretty dang solid. I like the fact that the tip of the blade has been, well, it maintains its classic shape. It wasn't folded down, or the fuller, the convex style does not run all the way up the length, which would have honestly made it a little more difficult to feel the weight of the sword on the tip. It's pretty lightweight and feels like I could really, swing it around with relative ease. Now overall, I do wish it did have a hammer line. That's my own gripe, but to be honest, for $190, honestly, I can't ask for too much. Got to cut prices somewhere. And honestly, while a hammer line would be, I suppose, fancy, it's still not bad overall. Next, we come to the other bit of the sword, and honestly, in my personal opinion, at least as far as looks goes, the Seiya is probably the highlight of it. The Seiya has two very cool patterns on it. It's pretty much a black polished Seiya or scabbard, and it looks pretty good, and the Sango or cord is pretty thick and durable, and honestly, I get some real thin ones sometimes when I'm buying them, and while they look pretty fancy in that, these definitely look like if you're going to use it, it could hold up well. But the highlight of this thing, first we have two very rather intricate looking wood carvings on there, which look pretty darn cool. It has sort of almost like a three trigram symbol type thing on the top of it, which honestly looks really dang cool. I'm not sure who came up with the design of this, but it is definitely exceptionally well. And honestly, the carving, while honestly I was a little leery of it would just be like a stamp press and that, but it looks like it was actually pretty well done, as well as the really cool carving, honestly my personal favorite, and why I think the Oni symbol fits well, is the demon down below in the middle. It is actually pretty darn cool, and actually as I'm staring at it a bit more, it's starting to look a little scarier and scarier, to be honest. The blade looks pretty darn cool, and honestly something you'd see from a certain car company that produces very fast cars, one specifically called the Demon. The cool design, honestly, is one of my favorite wood carvings I have on any of these katanas I personally own, or any of my swords for that matter. So overall, the Seiya is probably definitely the highlight of the blade. While the blade is still pretty darn cool, the Seiya definitely is exceptional as far as that goes. And especially if you're storing it for a lengthy period of time, it's definitely a good wall hanger as well. So overall, the looks of the blade, while simplistic in some areas, can still look rather intricate in others, and honestly, still a pretty darn good wall hanger as well as a user. So let's move on, now that we got this out of the way, to the testing, the real important stuff, shall we? On to the testing. So to start off with, we are going to do a little water bottle chop. This is kind of just to get a basic judgment for how sharp the blade is. And it's pretty sharp, you can see. Honestly, it's do that pretty easily. Didn't really expect too much challenge for it. Let's step it up a little bit, and then we into a little larger bottle, a little juice bottle that I had, and just went through this as well pretty dang easy. In fact, it actually cut so well that it left pretty much the bottom half still full with water. Didn't budge an inch. Next, I moved on to a little bit of a target. This is supposed to be an extra sharp and lightweight blade, so with that in mind, I wanted to test out the speed and cutting capabilities of this weapon. So I decided to do 3 quick cuts on an old rug roll, which it's a pretty thicker, basically wrapping paper roll, if you will, but it seems to go through it pretty well and allow me to cut pretty easily, and took a little rough swing on that last one. Next, we're going to move on to the more abusive test, if you will. I have here a an old atlas that I had and rolled it up into a nice thick ball. Now this is a pretty thick plastic bound and pretty thick papered roll. I don't expect this blade or much of any blade really to go through any of this. It's pretty thickly tight in that. But what this is testing out more is whether it can take a punch. And as you can see, it took quite the hit. It didn't go all the way through and actually made a pretty decent cut though, almost halfway through it. And the blade is relatively unharmed. There's not a scratch on it. There is no bending, which made me a little concerned with the last blade I tested out. But no, this one held pretty firm and actually held up pretty dang well. On to the tatami mat. This is where last time I kind of ruined my previous blade, so I was just a wee bit nervous. But, much to my surprise, honestly, I was going to do speed cutting if they would allow it. But to be honest, this blade went so cleanly through that first cut and then the second cut as well. As you can see, it pretty much was hard to actually line up a shot because, well, I'm no professional swordsman, so honestly, I didn't expect it to go through so cleanly. It made it through all cuts as well, including the last rough cut that I did, just to give it a good whack. And the blade held up firm. It cut very, very cleanly. So looking through all the objects we have here, you can see that all objects were cut pretty much perfectly. Again, as you can see, that atlas has pretty much a halfway cut gash throughout it, and while the blade did get stuck, it certainly did not break, bend, or take any real damage. At least none that I could see. So, with the testing out of the way, let's give the overall impressions of the blade, shall we? So, I have it ranked in the next 5 categories. First, we have appearance, the overall look and styling of the weapon. Next is durability. This gauges how well the blade can take a hit and avoid taking any kind of real damage. Third is quality. This is obviously the type of materials involved, the overall design, and the capabilities of the weapon. This next one is value. This is just the overall cost of the blade and how much it matches up to its competitors in a similar field. Next would be usability. How well the blade cuts, how well it performed, and whether or not it got stuck or did anything weird. That'll go over us, and that'll give us an overall score, and then we'll average it out and see what we end up with. So, to start off with appearance. So, looking over the katana, as you can see here, the blade is honestly nothing that special. It didn't rank overall that high in that. Like I said, it was lacking in a lot of capabilities. The Seiya is pretty cool on the weapon, but again, it's lacking a little bit of styling in that. So overall, I'm going to have to give the appearance an 8. It doesn't really have any designs on the pommel or the brace, and even the guard is pretty simplistic. You can tell a lot more focus went into the actual blade design in the Seiya than the actual handle or that. But that being said, the Seiya is still pretty damn good looking, and to be honest, it is one of my favorite etchings I've seen in a katana in quite a long time, to be honest. It's pretty cool, and honestly, that little demon is pretty badass in my opinion. At least that's just me. Next we come to durability. The blade basically took no real damage, at least as far as bending or chipping. The atlas cut, as I will call it, definitely was going to be designed to try to induce bending or folding or any kind of real warping in the blade, and it seemed to hold up pretty straight. The only thing I have to say is that as far as durability goes, and this is more of a matter of polishing and that, but as I cut the water bottles and that, I noticed it picked up some pretty quick brown spots, and as I cut the tatami mats, it picked up some scratches on it. Now, this has nothing to really do with durability as far as the actual blade's capability, and it held up pretty damn well. So I can't really say that it really affects it all that much. It's more just a gripe that I'll take off 1 point for it overall, just because, well, I don't want to sit here and repolish my blade to an extreme every time I do some quick cutting. But that being said, there's really no other gripes other than that. Honestly, if you just don't mind doing a little bit extra cleaning. The durability, I'll give a pretty solid 9 because, well, it held up pretty much to any other testing I could think of. Next comes quality. Again, the quality in that has been improving slightly through them. They have fixed a lot of their previous issues, like with the handles sliding around, or at least the wrap on it. But like I said, the materials, you can see they had to cut some corners as the blade design kind of was the major focus in that. But that being said, the materials are still really nice in the thing, but like I said, lacking a little bit of detail in that. So I'm going to give quality about a 7, which is pretty good, a little above average. Next, we come to value. Now, in a similar feel with these Unokubi-Zukuri katanas, they tend to be a little bit more on the more expensive side. It's a rather labor-intensive process that can be a bit challenging to do. So most of these rank in around the original price of $191 for the cheapy basic ones. The fact this has a little bit more ornamentation on that honestly does lend me a little bit of credence to be a little bit nicer in that. As far as value goes, honestly, it's pretty nice for what you can get, especially on the sale price and that. Is it as the fanciest as some of the other ones, or maybe is even long-term, but for the overall cost and the value involved, I give it about an 8 because, like I said, these swords are normally pretty expensive, and especially if you're looking to test one out, maybe in the future to buy one, maybe a little fancier, but honestly, this one's still pretty fancy. Then this definitely does a good job because it allows you to get a feel for the type of cutting abilities of these weapons, and honestly, it is worth the value. Next is usability. This gets its highest score of a 9 because honestly, I'm not sure I could give it anything else. The only thing that would make it more perfect if it chopped that Atlas in half. But again, that really wasn't the purpose of the test, but I don't know, I have to critique something on this thing. The cutting on this thing was absolutely fabulous, and handling of the blade was even better. I like the fact that the tip of the blade still maintains its classic shape because it allowed it to get a little bit more weight on the tip of the blade and feel pretty firm in the hand and allowed me to feel where that tip was going. And honestly, the handling characteristics of the blade were pretty dang light as well. It just felt like I was hardly swinging anything, at least compared to most of the blades I test out. So overall, this will give it a score of 41 out of 50, or for an overall rating of 8.2 of 10, which is pretty dang good. This is probably one of the nicest swords they sent me by far. And to be honest, I really like the handling characteristics. If you're definitely looking to get a really good chopper, this definitely will do it because the blade handles exceptionally well. The handle and feel are brilliant overall. And to be honest, especially if you're looking to try out one of these Unokubi-Zukuri katanas, it's not a traditional katana, so you can be a little nervous buying one. I would strongly suggest it, especially at the cost of only $153 on sale, or even if it's not on sale, $191 is pretty dang good as well. And honestly, I don't think you will be disappointed. The blade definitely looks like, especially if you're looking to do some quick cuts, that it'll definitely do the job. So my overall impression, 8.2 out of 10. It is an exceptional sword by Romance of Men. I have included with you the links below to check out the blade myself. And again, honestly, I would strongly recommend this blade. I give it 2 very strong thumbs up, at least in my opinion. So anyways, I appreciate you all checking out this video. Again, links to the katanas, not just Romance of Men, but the actual katana itself is down below. I'd appreciate a like and subscribe. And I thank you all for watching my video. Have a great day and a wonderful night. Goodbye.